She sat in 22C wearing old jeans and sneakers, just another tourist visiting Washington, D.C. When the plane systems failed at 35,000 feet, everything changed. "Eagle, this is NORAD command," crackled the radio. Suddenly Air Force One was escorting their flight. How did they know her secret call sign? Before you watch full story, comment below from which country are you watching. Don't forget to subscribe. Colonel Amanda Eagle Mitchell sat in seat 22C of United Airlines Flight 847, wearing faded jeans, a plain white t-shirt and old sneakers. Her graying hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she carried a worn backpack that looked like it had seen many trips. To everyone around her, she appeared to be just another middle-aged tourist flying from Denver to Washington, D.C. on a sunny Tuesday morning in November 2025. The flight attendant, Karen, offered her a complimentary snack. "First time visiting D.C.?" she asked with a friendly smile. "Not really," Amanda replied quietly. "I've been there before, but it's been a while." The college student beside her, Emily, was excited about her school trip to the nation's capital. "Are you going to see the monuments?" she asked eagerly. "I might," Amanda said with a gentle smile. "The Lincoln Memorial is beautiful this time of year." What Emily didn't know was that the woman sitting beside her had seen the Lincoln Memorial from the cockpit of Air Force One dozens of times. Amanda Eagle Mitchell had been the president's personal pilot for over 8 years, flying the most secure aircraft in the world through some of the most dangerous situations in modern history. Her call sign Eagle had been earned during her early career as a fighter pilot, when her exceptional eyesight and tactical awareness made her legendary in air-to-air combat. But for the past decade, she had been responsible for the safety of the President of the United States, flying Air Force One to every corner of the globe. 3 months ago, Amanda had retired from the Air Force after 25 years of service. She was finally taking her first vacation as a civilian, planning to visit D.C. as a tourist rather than as the pilot responsible for bringing the president home safely. Amanda had deliberately chosen to fly commercial for her vacation. After years of flying in the most secure and advanced aircraft in the world, she wanted to experience travel the way ordinary people did. She bought her own ticket, went through regular security screening and carried her own luggage. "It's strange being a passenger," she told Emily as they waited for takeoff. "I'm used to being in the cockpit." "Oh, are you a pilot?" Emily asked, suddenly more interested. "I was," Amanda replied simply. "I'm retired now." Emily assumed she had flown for the airlines or maybe been a military transport pilot. She had no way of knowing that the quiet woman beside her had landed Air Force One in war zones, had flown the president out of hostile airspace during international crises, and had been trusted with the most classified missions in American aviation. "What kind of planes did you fly?" Emily asked. "Different types," Amanda answered, not wanting to elaborate. "Mostly large aircraft." As Flight 847 climbed to cruising altitude, Amanda found herself enjoying the simple pleasure of being a passenger. She didn't have to worry about flight planning, security protocols, or the safety of the most important person in America. She could just sit back, read a book and watch the countryside pass below. But her peaceful vacation was about to become something much more complicated. 2 hours into the flight, Captain James Sullivan was monitoring the aircraft's systems when he noticed something that made his blood run cold. Multiple warning lights were illuminating on the instrument panel, indicating failures in critical flight systems. "Sarah," he said to First Officer Sarah Chin, "we're showing hydraulic failures in Systems 1 and 2. First Officer Chin quickly ran through the emergency checklist while Captain Sullivan tried to determine the extent of the problem. What they discovered was every pilot's nightmare, cascading system failures that were making the aircraft increasingly difficult to control. "Jim, we're losing flight controls," Chin reported. "The aircraft is becoming unstable." Captain Sullivan immediately declared an emergency. "Denver Center, United 847 declaring emergency. We have multiple system failures and are losing flight control authority." "United 847, Denver Center copies your emergency. What are your intentions?" "Denver Center, we need immediate vectors to the nearest suitable airport. We may not be able to maintain controlled flight much longer." As the emergency developed, the aircraft began experiencing severe turbulence and control difficulties. Passengers started to panic as they felt the unusual movements and heard the stress in the pilot's voice over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're experiencing some technical difficulties," Captain Sullivan announced. "Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened while we work to resolve the situation." But privately, Captain Sullivan wasn't sure they could resolve the situation. The aircraft was becoming harder to control with each passing minute, and they were running out of options. When United Flight 847 declared an emergency with multiple system failures, the North American Aerospace Defense Command, NORAD, immediately began tracking the situation. A commercial aircraft with control problems over the central United States was a potential security concern that required military attention. But this particular emergency occurred at the worst possible time. President Elizabeth Warren was scheduled to depart Andrews Air Force Base in 30 minutes aboard Air Force One for a critical diplomatic mission to Europe. The president's flight path would take Air Force One directly through the airspace where United 847 was experiencing its emergency. "Sir," reported Major Lisa Rodriguez to Colonel Michael Thompson at NORAD Command, "we have a commercial emergency aircraft that may pose a conflict with Eagle's departure." Eagle was the Secret Service code name for President Warren, and any potential conflict with her travel required immediate attention from the highest levels of military and security personnel. Colonel Thompson reviewed the situation quickly. "What's the nature of the emergency?" "Multiple system failures, possible loss of flight control. The aircraft is having difficulty maintaining stable flight." "And the conflict with Eagle?" "If the commercial aircraft can't maintain its current heading, it could drift into Eagle's departure corridor. We may need to delay the president's departure." But President Warren's trip to Europe was time-critical. Delaying her departure could have serious diplomatic consequences that affected national security. Colonel Thompson made a decision that would change everything. "Scramble F-22s to escort the emergency aircraft and ensure separation from Eagle's corridor. Also, I want a complete passenger manifest for that commercial flight." As F-22 fighters from the Colorado Air National Guard climbed toward United Flight 847, military personnel at NORAD were reviewing the passenger manifest as part of standard security procedures. What they found made Colonel Thompson pause and reach for his secure phone. "Sir," Major Rodriguez reported, "you're not going to believe who's on that commercial flight." "What do you mean?" "Passenger in seat 22C is listed as Amanda Mitchell." "Colonel Amanda Mitchell." Colonel Thompson's eyes widened. Every senior military officer knew who Amanda Eagle Mitchell was. She had been the president's pilot for 8 years, had flown Air Force One through more dangerous situations than any pilot in history, and was considered one of the most skilled aviators in the Air Force. "Are you certain it's her?" Thompson asked. "Confirmed, sir." Colonel Amanda Mitchell, call sign Eagle, retired 3 months ago after commanding the Presidential Airlift Group. Thompson immediately understood the implications. The commercial aircraft carrying one of the most experienced pilots in the Air Force was experiencing a flight emergency that could potentially affect the president's departure. But more than that, if anyone could help the crew of United 847 deal with their emergency, it was Amanda Mitchell. "Get me a direct line to that aircraft," Thompson ordered. "And contact the White House. They need to know about this situation immediately." Aboard United Flight 847, the situation was deteriorating rapidly. Captain Sullivan and First Officer Chen were fighting to maintain control of the aircraft as more systems failed. The passengers could feel every struggle with the controls, and panic was beginning to spread through the cabin. "We need to find an airport immediately," Sullivan told Air Traffic Control. "I don't know how much longer we can maintain controlled flight." It was then that a transmission came through on a secure military frequency that the aircraft's radio could monitor. "United 847, this is NORAD Command. We understand you have Colonel Amanda Mitchell aboard your aircraft. We need to speak with Eagle immediately." In seat 22C, Amanda heard her call sign and felt her heart skip a beat. Her quiet vacation as an anonymous tourist had just ended. Somehow, military command knew her identity and was calling her by the same call sign that had been used for the president when she was his pilot. Emily, the college student beside her, stared in confusion. "Did they just call you Eagle? Isn't that?" Before Emily could finish her question, Captain Sullivan's voice came over the intercom. "Colonel Mitchell, this is Captain Sullivan. Could you please come to the cockpit immediately? We need your assistance." Every passenger on the aircraft turned to look at Amanda as she unbuckled her seatbelt. The quiet tourist in faded jeans was suddenly revealed to be something entirely different. "Ma'am," said the flight attendant as Amanda made her way forward, "are you really a colonel?" "I was," Amanda replied simply. "I'm retired now." But as she walked toward the cockpit, Amanda knew that retirement was a luxury she couldn't afford while 180 people needed help. As Amanda entered the cockpit of United 847, she immediately recognized the severity of the situation. Multiple warning lights, erratic instrument readings, and the struggle she could see in both pilots' faces told her everything she needed to know. What systems have you lost? She asked Captain Sullivan, her voice calm and authoritative. Hydraulics 1 and 2 are gone, Sullivan replied. We're getting intermittent failures in flight controls, and the aircraft is becoming increasingly unstable. Amanda looked at the instrument panel with the trained eye of someone who had dealt with aircraft emergencies at the highest levels of responsibility. Her experience flying Air Force One, one of the most complex aircraft ever built, had taught her to rapidly assess and respond to system failures. What's your fuel state? She asked. About 90 minutes at current consumption, First Officer Chin answered. Nearest suitable airport? Colorado Springs is about 40 miles southeast, but we're not sure we can maintain heading that long. Amanda made a series of rapid calculations based on the aircraft's condition, weather, and available options. Her experience making critical decisions while responsible for the president's safety had taught her to process complex information quickly and choose the best course of action under pressure. We're going to Colorado Springs, she said firmly. Captain Sullivan, you're going to continue as pilot in command. I'm going to help coordinate with military assets and provide technical assistance. Colonel, with respect, I've never dealt with failures this severe, Sullivan admitted. You don't have to, Amanda replied. I have. NORAD Command, this is Eagle, Amanda transmitted on the secure military frequency. I'm in the cockpit of United 847 and have assessed the situation. Eagle, NORAD Command. Ma'am, we have F-22s en route to provide escort. What do you need? Amanda's response demonstrated why she had been trusted with the president's safety for 8 years. I need real-time weather for Colorado Springs, runway conditions, and emergency equipment standing by. Also, I need you to clear all traffic from our approach corridor and have medical teams ready for potential injuries. Roger, Eagle. All assets are being coordinated for your support. What happened next was unprecedented in aviation history. A commercial airliner was being supported by the same military infrastructure normally reserved for Air Force One. Amanda was using protocols and communication systems that had been developed specifically for presidential flights. Captain Sullivan, Amanda said, I'm going to walk you through an approach technique that we use for high-risk landings. It's more complex than standard procedures, but it will give us better control with limited hydraulics. Sullivan listened carefully as Amanda explained advanced flying techniques that were normally classified and used only for the most critical government flights. Colonel, how do you know these procedures? First Officer Chin asked. Because I've used them to land Air Force One with similar failures, Amanda replied matter-of-factly. Meanwhile, at Andrews Air Force Base, President Warren was receiving briefings about the situation involving United Flight 847. When she learned that her former pilot was aboard the emergency aircraft, she made a decision that surprised everyone. I want Air Force One to provide escort support for that commercial flight, she told her staff. Madam President, said Chief of Staff Robert Harrison, that would mean delaying your departure for Europe. The diplomatic implications. The diplomatic implications of abandoning Americans in distress would be worse, President Warren replied firmly. Colonel Mitchell flew me safely through war zones. An international crisis for 8 years. Now she needs help and we're going to provide it. The president's decision meant that Air Force One, the most secure and heavily protected aircraft in the world, would serve as command and control for the rescue of a commercial airliner. It was an unprecedented use of presidential aircraft for a civilian emergency. Besides, President Warren added, if anyone can save that flight, it's Eagle. Within minutes, Air Force One was taxiing toward takeoff, not for a diplomatic mission to Europe, but to coordinate the rescue of United Flight 847. As Air Force One climbed toward the location of United Flight 847, President Warren established direct communication with Amanda in the cockpit of the troubled commercial aircraft. Eagle, this is Warren, the president transmitted, using the informal call sign that she and Amanda had developed during their years of flying together. Warren, this is Eagle, Amanda replied, immediately recognizing the president's voice. Thank you for the support. Eagle, you brought me home safely more times than I can count. Now it's our turn to bring you home safely. The involvement of Air Force One in the rescue operation provided Amanda with resources that no commercial aircraft had ever had access to. Real-time weather data, advanced navigation systems, and direct communication with military command gave her the tools she needed to coordinate the most complex emergency landing of her career. United 847, this is Air Force One, came the transmission from the presidential aircraft. We are assuming command and control for your emergency approach to Colorado Springs. Captain Sullivan looked at Amanda in amazement. Air Force One is coordinating our emergency? The president takes care of people who take care of her, Amanda replied. As United Flight 847 began its descent toward Colorado Springs, Amanda coordinated the approach with the precision of a presidential flight operation. She had Air Force One providing navigation assistance, F-22 fighters monitoring weather conditions, and ground teams preparing for every possible scenario. Colorado Springs Tower, United 847 heavy emergency inbound with Air Force One coordination, Amanda transmitted. United 847 Colorado Springs Tower. We have emergency equipment standing by and all traffic cleared from your approach. Air Force One, we're honored to have you coordinating this operation. The approach to Colorado Springs required Amanda to use every technique she had learned during her years as the president's pilot. The aircraft's control problems made standard procedures inadequate, but the advanced techniques used for Air Force One operations provided solutions. Captain Sullivan, Amanda instructed, I need you to use constant pressure on the controls rather than making discrete inputs. The damaged hydraulic systems respond better to steady pressure than quick corrections. As they descended through 10,000 feet, the aircraft experienced severe control problems that would have been impossible for most pilots to handle. But Amanda's experience landing Air Force One in hostile environments had prepared her for exactly this type of emergency. Eagle Air Force One, came the president's voice. How are you doing down there? Same as always, Warren, Amanda replied calmly. Bringing everyone home safely. The final approach to Colorado Springs was one of the most challenging that Amanda had ever coordinated. The aircraft's control problems required constant adjustments, and the margin for error was virtually non-existent. But with Air Force One providing support and military assets coordinating every aspect of the emergency, Amanda was able to guide Captain Sullivan through a landing that saved 180 lives. Power back gradually, Amanda instructed as they passed through 500 feet. Don't fight the aircraft, work with it. You're doing great. At 200 feet, a sudden control problem caused the aircraft to pitch upward unexpectedly. Captain Sullivan began to panic, but Amanda's calm guidance kept him focused. Easy correction, forward pressure. Trust the aircraft and trust your training. We've got this. The Boeing 757 touched down on the runway with a harder impact than normal, but Captain Sullivan managed to keep the aircraft centered and under control. As they rolled out, emergency vehicles surrounded them, ready to provide assistance to any injured passengers. United 847, excellent job, Colorado Springs Tower transmitted. Emergency equipment is standing by. In the passenger cabin, 180 people applauded the safe landing, many of them realizing for the first time that the quiet tourist in seat 22C had just saved their lives. As United Flight 847 came to a stop at Colorado Springs, Air Force One circled overhead in a gesture of respect and recognition. President Warren wanted to personally acknowledge Amanda's actions and the successful rescue of the commercial flight. Eagle, this is Warren, the president transmitted. Outstanding job as always. You just reminded me why I trusted you with my life for 8 years. Thank you, Warren, Amanda replied. Just doing what needed to be done. But it wasn't just what needed to be done, it was what could only have been done by someone with Amanda's unique combination of skills, experience and access to military resources. Her ability to coordinate with Air Force One, communicate with military assets, and use advanced flying techniques had made the impossible rescue possible. As passengers deplaned, many of them stopped to thank Amanda personally. Emily, the college student who had been sitting beside her, was among the last to leave. I can't believe I was sitting next to the president's pilot this whole time, she said in amazement. Why didn't you tell me? Amanda smiled. Because I was just a tourist until I wasn't. Air Force One landed at Colorado Springs shortly after the commercial aircraft, and President Warren personally greeted Amanda on the tarmac. Colonel Mitchell, the president said formally, then broke into a smile. Eagle, it's good to see you again. It's good to see you too, Madam President, Amanda replied. Though I was hoping our next meeting would be under better circumstances. Within hours of the emergency landing, news of the incident captured international attention. The story of a retired presidential pilot who had saved a commercial flight while traveling as a tourist became front-page news around the world. Air Force One pilot saves commercial flight, read the headlines. Presidential aircraft coordinates civilian rescue, wrote aviation journalists who understood the unprecedented nature of the operation. But Amanda tried to deflect the attention, insisting that Captain Sullivan and First Officer Chin deserved the credit for successfully landing the damaged aircraft. I just provided coordination, she told reporters at Colorado Springs Airport. Captain Sullivan is the one who flew that approach and saved 180 lives. Captain Sullivan, however, was quick to correct that narrative. Colonel Mitchell didn't just provide coordination, he told the media. She used resources and techniques that probably don't exist anywhere else in aviation. Without her experience and her connection to presidential flight operations, we might not have made it down safely. President Warren also spoke to the media about Amanda's actions. Colonel Mitchell served as my pilot for 8 years, and I trusted her with my life every time we flew together, the president said. Today she proved once again why that trust was well placed. As with all major aviation emergencies, the incident involving United Flight 847 was thoroughly investigated by multiple agencies. The investigation revealed details about Amanda's actions that made her performance even more remarkable. Colonel Mitchell had no current qualification on the Boeing 757, reported lead investigator Captain Patricia Wong. She was familiar with the aircraft's systems from her technical training, but she had been flying Air Force One exclusively for 8 years. Yet she coordinated the emergency response with the expertise of a veteran airline captain. The investigation also revealed that Amanda's decision to use Air Force One as command and control for the operation had provided capabilities that would never have been available for a normal commercial emergency. The advanced communication systems, real-time weather data, and military coordination that Colonel Mitchell accessed through Air Force One gave her tools that no civilian aircraft has ever had during an emergency, the investigation report concluded. Her ability to coordinate these resources was crucial to the successful outcome. The Federal Aviation Administration and the Air Force began studying Amanda's actions to understand how presidential flight procedures could be adapted for civilian aviation emergencies. Colonel Mitchell's performance demonstrates that the advanced techniques developed for Air Force One operations have applications beyond presidential transport, said Air Force Colonel James Miller, who led the military analysis of the incident. 2 weeks after the incident, Amanda returned to her planned vacation in Washington, D.C. But instead of traveling as an anonymous tourist, she found herself recognized everywhere she went. Her quiet retirement had been permanently altered by her actions aboard United Flight 847. President Warren invited Amanda to visit the White House, where they toured Air Force One together, the aircraft they had shared for so many critical missions. "Do you miss it?" the president asked as they stood in the cockpit of the presidential aircraft. "Sometimes," Amanda admitted. "But I'm proud that my experience could help save those people on the commercial flight." "You know," President Warren said, "if you ever want to come back to work, Air Force One could use a pilot with your experience." Amanda smiled. "Thank you, Madam President, but I think I'll stick with retirement. Though I might fly commercial a little less often from now on." The president laughed. "I don't blame you. Though airlines are probably hoping you'll keep flying with them. You're the best emergency backup pilot they could ask for." 6 months after the United Flight 847 incident, Amanda was asked to speak at the Air Force Academy about her experience. Her presentation focused on the importance of maintaining skills and readiness, even in retirement. "When I boarded that flight in Denver, I thought I was just a tourist going on vacation," she told the cadets. "But there's no such thing as a retired pilot when people need help in the air." She used the incident to illustrate broader principles about leadership, preparedness, and service. "The skills we learn as military pilots aren't just useful during our active duty careers," she explained. "They're skills that can serve our country and our fellow citizens throughout our lives." The cadets, all aspiring military pilots themselves, understood the significance of what Amanda had accomplished. "Ma'am," asked Cadet Jennifer Rodriguez, "how did you know that your Air Force One experience would apply to a commercial emergency?" "I didn't," Amanda replied honestly. "But I knew that flying is flying and pilots help pilots. When someone needs help in the air, you use whatever skills and resources you have available." The Air Force Academy began using Amanda's experience as a case study in their leadership and crisis management courses, demonstrating how advanced military training can serve civilian needs during emergencies. 2 years later, Amanda remained in touch with many of the people whose lives had been affected by the United Flight 847 incident. Captain Sullivan and First Officer Chen continued to fly for United Airlines, but they never forgot the day when the president's former pilot had saved their aircraft. Emily, the college student who had been sitting beside Amanda, graduated and became an aerospace engineering student, inspired by her experience to pursue a career in aviation. "Meeting Colonel Mitchell changed my life," Emily said during a presentation about the incident. "She showed me that aviation is about more than just flying aircraft, it's about using your skills to help others." President Warren continued to speak about Amanda's actions as an example of the dedication and service that define American military personnel. Colonel Mitchell's actions aboard that commercial flight represent the best of our military values, the president said during a speech at the Air Force Academy. She demonstrated that service to country doesn't end with retirement, it's a lifetime commitment. The incident had also inspired changes in how airlines handle emergencies involving military personnel. Commercial aviation companies now have protocols for identifying and utilizing retired military pilots who might be traveling as passengers during emergencies. 3 years after the incident, Amanda was invited to speak at the dedication of a new emergency response center at Colorado Springs Airport. The center had been built using lessons learned from the United Flight 847 emergency and was designed to coordinate military and civilian resources during aviation crises. This facility represents the kind of cooperation that made our emergency landing possible, Amanda told the assembled crowd of military and civilian aviation personnel. When civilian and military aviation work together, we can accomplish things that neither could do alone. The dedication ceremony was attended by many of the people who had been involved in the rescue operation, including the F-22 pilots who had provided escort, the air traffic controllers who had coordinated the approach, and the emergency personnel who had responded to the landing. President Warren spoke at the ceremony via video link from Air Force One, which was flying over the Pacific Ocean on a diplomatic mission. Colonel Mitchell's actions 3 years ago proved that American aviation, military and civilian, is strongest when we work together, the president said. This facility will ensure that future emergencies can be handled with the same level of coordination and professionalism. Today, Amanda Mitchell continues her retirement, traveling occasionally and enjoying the quiet life she had always planned after her military career. But she no longer travels anonymously. Her name is recognized by aviation personnel around the world as the pilot who saved United Flight 847. When she does fly commercially, airline crews often recognize her name on passenger manifests and quietly ensure that she receives the respect due to someone who has served both as the president's pilot and as an emergency responder who saved 180 lives. But Amanda remains modest about her role in the incident. "I was in the right place at the right time with the right experience," she tells people who ask about that day. Any pilot would have done the same thing. Her colleagues disagree. They understand that Amanda's performance required not just piloting skills, but the ability to coordinate complex resources under pressure while lives hung in the balance. The passengers from United Flight 847 never forgot the quiet tourist in Seat 22C who had saved their lives. Many of them send Amanda cards and letters of gratitude, thanking her for proving that heroes often sit in the most ordinary places, waiting for the moment when extraordinary action is needed. Air Force One continues to fly around the world, carrying presidents on diplomatic missions and serving as a symbol of American power and prestige. But the crew members who fly the presidential aircraft know that its most remarkable mission might have been the day when it served as command and control for the rescue of a commercial airliner. In aviation museums and training facilities around the country, the story of United Flight 847 is told as an example of how military and civilian aviation can work together to save lives. Young pilots learn about Amanda's actions not just as a technical achievement, but as a demonstration of the values that make aviation a profession dedicated to bringing people home safely. And sometimes, late at night in airport lounges around the world, pilots still talk about Eagle, the legendary Air Force One pilot who proved that retirement doesn't end a pilot's commitment to service, and that the president's aircraft will respond when any American needs help in the sky. She was just a tourist in Seat 22C, wearing faded jeans and carrying a worn backpack. But when 180 people needed help at 35,000 feet, Amanda "Eagle" Mitchell became exactly what she had always been, a pilot whose call sign commanded the respect of Air Force One and whose skills could bring anyone home safely. This story celebrates the enduring commitment of military personnel to serve others even after retirement, and the extraordinary resources that can be mobilized when America's most elite aviation assets work together to save lives.